Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. We're doing a ranking of all Stephen King published short stories, total of 115 right now, with the publication of You Like It Darker in next month. Let's go and get started. These are stories 85 through 81. Basically, I made the stories into quarters, roughly. So these are the last ones in the fourth quarter. The worst stories, some worse than others, of course. We're starting to get into the average coming up soon, but we still have some of the ones that didn't quite work, just something wrong with it, a little bit of repetitiveness in some of the stories, and stories that, quite frankly, are a little weird sometimes. But let's go ahead and start with story number 85. Story number 85 is in the book Everything's Eventual. It is called Lucky Quarter. Lucky is spelled Luckey. It was originally published in USA Weekend in 1995. A woman receives a lucky quarter and things start to go right for her. And then things change, but not in the way that you might think, not in like really a monkey paws kind of way. It's, well, it was published in USA Weekend, and it seems like the type of story that would be published in USA Weekend. There's just not really a lot to it. It seems a little, I won't use the word saccharine, but somewhere around that, it seems like something that would be published in USA Weekend. And I have read this recently. Again, I went through all the Stephen King books in a reread a couple years ago, and it's just one of those stories. It's not offensively bad. It There's just nothing to it. There's no substance to it whatsoever. Uh, I don't really have anything much else to say about it. It's just, and I talked about last time what collections are like the worst ones. Uh, this Everything's Eventual is not actually that bad. There are a lot of good stories in it. The problem is a lot of those good stories are actually novellas, and I think Lucky Quarter probably not the worst story in this collection. I believe I've mentioned Everything's Eventual before, so obviously not the worst, but it's just not a very good story. Short story number 84 is The Dune, published in The Bizarre Bad Dreams. It was originally published in Granta in 2001. Not quite sure what type of publication that is. Perhaps a quarterly literary work. I don't know. In the Dune, there's a judge who talks to a young lawyer about a Dune that he's basically been obsessed with all his life. In There's a message that the Dune gives, and the way that the story is structured, you think it's a message for the judge, and perhaps it's not. This this seems like the type of story that could have been written earlier in his career. It could have been something that was in Night Shift or Skeleton Crew. But if it had been published in either of those, I think it would have been one of those ones. And perhaps it's just because of the title, but it makes me think about a Skeleton Crew, uh, Beach World, Beach, Dune, even though they're vastly different stories, but it seems to me they're kind of at the same quality level, although I haven't reached Beach World yet in this ranking, but it's not going to be too far away. So it's pretty simple, kind of O. Henry twist kind of thing at the end. with characters that just don't stand out particularly. That's a problem with some Stephen King works, is that the characters don't pop off the page as Stephen King characters. I think Stephen King characters work when they have room to work. And short stories don't always have that room. Short stories are basically, I believe King himself may have phrased it, they're a kiss in the dark. And sometimes kisses in the dark just don't work. Lips don't match up, foreheads bump, hands go in the wrong places, and I think that's just kind of here with it. It's not a bad story. It's just not particularly memorable, and pretty much can kind of tell where it's going right away. Short story number 83, not counting the stories that are going to be published in You Like It Darker, this may be one of the, I guess, highest or lowest ranked. It's one of the best non-collected stories that I have on this list. I could be wrong, and I may have to correct this in a further video. But a lot of the uncollected short stories we've already gone over. This one was originally published, or it was originally written in the 1960s, but it was published in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, I believe, in maybe 1978. I can't remember the exact year. I don't. It's The Night of the Tiger. It is set in a carnival. There are two men who are basically rivals and have been for years, and it gets a little bit supernatural. It is told from the point of view of a typical Stephen King narrator, a young man, a little bit idealistic maybe, and not particularly involved in the events of the story, but more a witness to them. It's a fine story, especially considering it's early King. Like I said, published sometime in the 70s, but written in the 1960s. I think I think if King took another whack at it and published it in Skeleton Crew or something, and gave it a little bit more polish, I could see it ranking quite highly. And I feel like King can write these types of stories very well. Stories set at carnivals. Joyland, which to me is a very good book, shows that he can do that. Uh, I think that for whatever reason, he just never felt the need to go back to it. And because he didn't feel the need to go back to it, he kind of left it as it was, which was a decent story, but nothing spectacular. I don't know if many of my ranking choices are going to be too controversial, but I feel like this one is. At number 82 in Night Shift, which I don't have a cover for it, is Jerusalem's Lot. Now, I know there are going to be people who are going to say, "What? No way. This is at least in my top 20 or so." But I have to preface this with I'm not a fan of epistolary works, stories that are written in the form of letters. I don't mind that being part of a story. I just don't enjoy it when that is the story. It's also it's a gothic tale, and it reads like a gothic tale. I could see it having been published in the early 20th century, and it's not bad, but it just takes forever for me. And again, I have to say, I don't like epistolary works. I know that there are ones that are good that I enjoy. I can't think of any at the top of my head, but those are exceptions, not the rules. Pretty much, if you give me an epistolary work, I'm kind of be like going, okay, this sucks. Prove me wrong. And I just don't think Jerusalem's Lot proved me wrong. And of course, Jerusalem's Lot is set in Salem's Lot, kind of a precursor to the book Salem's Lot. I don't think it was published before it was published in Night Shift. I haven't written that down, and I'm pretty sure it was just written for the book. To me, it was too long, too dry, not particularly interesting. I don't like letters in my stories. So if if to you this story is top 20, top 10, top 5, whatever, makes perfect sense to me. You're not going to like what I like all the time. This is just one of those ones where I'm like, it's like right now I'm reading an interesting book, but there are horses in it. I don't like horses. Traumatic experience. So my perception of that is like, this is a book, got a lot of horses in it. I'm not going to like it as much as like if it had cats in it. I like cats, awesome. Horses, so epistolary stories, eh. So, and that gets us to short story number 81, which is Finn. It was originally published on Scribd online in 2022. It is going to be collected in You Like It Darker, so it is, as of this moment, technically not collected, but technically it is collected because it is in the book. You just can't read it yet, except for a few people. It is about a young man in Ireland who's generally unlucky, and he gets kidnapped, and the people who kidnap him think that he is somebody that he is not, and basically it's him dealing with that. I, I wanted to like this story more than I did. It's one of those later King stories where it's like, oh, this is really going to, oh, it's done. That resolution didn't really do much for me. I know I bring it up a lot because lots of people say King doesn't do endings well, and I'm like, that's not true. But sometimes he doesn't, and it's not that he doesn't do endings well. It's that he sometimes doesn't really do endings. It's just like la la da 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 da. This happened. This happened. This happened. I'm done. And it's like no, it's like a radio cut on a song. It's just like there's not an ending sequence to it. It just switches to a commercial real quick, and it's like, oh no, shouldn't there have been more to that song? It's like no, no, just hard cut. And I feel like I liked the character Finn. I felt there could have been more done with this. I didn't really care for a lot of the secondary characters. I this was one of those ones where I felt like this could have been a novella, and it could have been a very good novella. But King just said, no, it's a short story, and I did what I wanted to with it. And it's like, but you didn't do what I wanted you to do with it. Not like I need to tell you what to do, but you, you're, hi, Wash, you're sending me down this path, and then the path just ends. And it's like, I mean, I didn't know if the path was going to go to the lighthouse or the beach or that scary cave. It's like, no, it just, all of a sudden, there's not a path. So that is stories 85 through 81. We're going to start getting to much better, good but flawed stories. Some that are just kind of like, I'd read it again, but I don't particularly feel I need to read it again. And since I mention it every video, nothing as bad as Man with the Belly, which is one of the worst stories I've ever read. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I will talk to you next time.